If you touch that report one more time, I swear you'll be out of here today.
If you touch that report one more time, I swear you'll be out of here today, he said, chewing each word with the pleasure of someone who's never heard a no. The 47th floor of Vascour Capital seemed silent, but it was fear holding its breath. My name is Michael Donovan, Senior Financial Manager, and I held that pen like a detonator. Across the desk, Logan Harper, the spoiled son of the CEO, smiled. He thought power was synonymous with impunity. I was about to learn that courage has a price, and the receipt arrives right then. He pushed a folder toward me, like tossing crumbs to a pigeon. Sign and file it, Donovan. It's just an accounting reclassification. Reclassification. His favorite euphemism for embezzlement. I kept my voice steady, showing the spreadsheets, the footnotes, the trail of money that didn't add up. The cash flow doesn't match the company's risk policy, I replied. He spun his chair, looking at the city like he owned it. Risk policy is for the little people, Mike. When he called me Mike, I knew the threat was real. I took a deep breath. I don't sabotage ladders, I said, remembering his offer of ambition. I just don't climb rotten wood. His smile cracked. At that moment, Richard Harper, the CEO, entered the room. He looked at his son, then at me, and sensed the gunpowder in the air. Logan jumped ahead. Donovan is delaying the close. And that was it. The meeting ended with a corporate nod. I knew I'd lost before even starting. Back at my desk, the HR email was already waiting. Meeting at 4 p.m. Translation: bring your cardboard box. The firing was a ballet of rehearsed words: breach of trust, unethical conduct, cultural misalignment, empty terms to justify protecting a corrupt heir. I signed the papers so I could walk out, feeling the pitying and relieved stares from my colleagues. They were relieved it wasn't them. I took with me a desk clock, a cactus that never died, and what was left of my dignity. In the hallway, I crossed paths with Sarah Collins, the external auditor visiting the company. Our eyes met for a second, and she understood everything. With a half-sad smile, she whispered as she passed, "You just said no, huh?" The elevator door closed like a sentence. On the street, the steam from Manhattan's manholes swallowed me. The Vascour building gleamed behind me, a hollow trophy. I had no job, no plan, just a map of frauds etched in my memory. That night, the rain hammered the window of my apartment. The cardboard box on the kitchen table was a monument to my failure. The silence smelled of cold coffee and bills due. The world seemed to have ended, and the weight of what I'd lost threatened to crush me. I stared at the powered-off laptop, imagining the dozens of resumes I'd have to send, the humiliating interviews. That's when, at 2:11 a.m., the screen lit up with a notification. An email, no subject, masked sender, a zipped file that seemed heavier than lead. For a moment I hesitated, but what else did I have to lose? I clicked the file out of desperation, curiosity, maybe a last spasm of rebellion, and what I found in those documents changed everything. They were the proofs, the raw digital truth. The first attachment revealed movements from a Delaware subsidiary, with dates dancing dangerously close to quarterly closes, notes of adjustment signed by people who never adjusted anything, and in the footer of every fraudulent transaction, the electronic signature that would become my obsession, approved by L. Harper. My heart understood before my brain could process it. That wasn't a mistake. It was a system. The second file brought contracts with an offshore in the Virgin Islands, with broken values and fractional transfers, like trying to hide in the shadow of a compliance radar. Emails requesting agility and flexibility, the vocabulary of corporate mud. I recognized the writing, the haste, the shortcuts. It was the handwriting of privilege without shame, the certainty that no one would ever look closely. I closed my eyes, and in silence, did the math. I followed the money trail like I followed columns in a spreadsheet. The sums told a story the board would call tax optimization strategy. I called it spreadsheet theft. The third attachment was the final piece, a tampered reconciliation spreadsheet with hidden rows and formulas with millimeter deviations designed to fool any inattentive auditor. But I wasn't inattentive. Whoever sent me that knew it. The email wasn't an accident. It was an invitation to war. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from an adrenaline I hadn't felt in years. I replied with a short, direct question. Why me? The response came in 3 words that ignited the night and gave new purpose to my rage. because you said no. In that moment, the fear dissipated, replaced by glacial clarity. I was no longer a victim. I had a match, and a whole stock of paper to burn. At dawn, the phone buzzed. Unknown number. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, and familiar. "Can we talk, Donovan? This is Sarah Collins. I think you got what I sent." The world clicked into place like a spreadsheet that finally balances. My fall had just become the beginning of their fall.
We met at a discreet cafe far from Wall Street's eyes. Sarah arrived in a dark trench coat and a laptop thin as a blade. Her gaze was analytical, weighing the potential of an ally. "You're calmer than I expected," she said. "It's the advantage of someone who's already lost everything," I replied. And she gave a light laugh, but her eyes didn't smile. They were the eyes of someone who's seen empires crumble and knew the cost. She showed me the original reports, with internal watermarks and electronic signatures proving the fraud. Documents that, in her words, were like digital confessions from Logan Harper. "These files could bring down the entire Vascor, Michael, but they'll try to bury you with it. They'll accuse you, sue you, destroy your reputation. Are you ready for that?" She spoke without emotion, like discussing the weather, but the question was deadly serious. "I don't want justice on paper, Sarah. Justice on paper is just a corporate apology. I want the truth laid bare for everyone to see." The plan was born there, between the smell of burnt coffee and the clink of porcelain. She, as the third-party auditor, would be my eyes inside, planting seeds of doubt. I would be the ghost outside, the external agent gathering pieces and preparing the strike. We'd use the system's own bureaucracy against it, turning its rigidity into its greatest weakness. Sarah looked at me, searching for any sign of hesitation. "If this leaks the wrong way, you'll never work anywhere again." I smiled, a smile I hadn't felt in a long time. "Sarah, I don't want to go back. I want to turn the page with fire." She closed the laptop, decided, "Then let's start." The 47th floor always falls first. Back in my apartment, the cursor blinked on the screen. Revenge was no longer emotional. It was mathematical. Every data point a brick, every transaction a proof. Vascor had built its own coffin, and I just needed to nail the lid. I backed up copies in 3 distinct locations. If they tried to silence me, the numbers would scream for me. And then I did something new. I turned on the camera. I recorded my first anonymous video. No face, just my voice and the numbers on screen, explaining the fraud in cold, technical terms. The system is corrupt, but the code speaks for itself. I posted it on Auditor and international investor forums. The views started climbing. It was the sound of fear being sown in Vascor's glass corridors. 3 days after our meeting, Sarah sent me an encrypted message. "Got access. I'm in." It was our entry door to Vascor's internal network. Using a multi-layer VPN and a clean notebook with no history, I dove into the servers of the company that discarded me. It was like coming home, except now I was the thief of my own story. The feeling was a bizarre mix of power and transgression. Navigating those familiar folders gave me a strange kind of dark pleasure. There were my old reports, now mutilated, with forged signatures and edited versions of notes I'd written myself. Logan had rewritten history to protect himself, and now I had the original version, with date and time. It was the difference between a rumor and total ruin. Sarah oversaw everything from inside, disguised in a conference room borrowed. "Do you realize you're hacking a multi-billion-dollar publicly traded corporation?" she whispered through the secure earpiece. "I'd rather call it an unauthorized audit conducted by a very motivated ex-employee," she snorted, a tense laugh escaping. "With every line you open, a lawyer with a gold Rolex is born somewhere on Wall Street." That's when I froze. I found a file that shouldn't exist, hidden in a subfolder of an archived project. The name was discreet, Structural Transfer 9.5M. It was the European contract, the same one he forced me to approve under threat, but this was the real document, with all the details, digital seals and approval trails pointing straight to Logan. The money had been redirected to a ghost company with a name almost comically obvious, called Harper Consulting LLC. Creativity was never his strong suit. I sent an encrypted copy to Sarah. The chat went silent for a few seconds that felt like eternity. "Michael, this isn't a silver bullet. This is the damn atomic bomb." "No," I replied. "It's still the holster. The bomb explodes when the press knows." We spent hours analyzing the money route, unraveling a web of corruption involving 3 countries, 2 shell banks, and a holding that only existed on paper. With every knot we untied, a new lie emerged. That's when Sarah stopped and said something that marked me deeply. "You realize this isn't just about revenge anymore, right? It's become a matter of survival." She was right. Revenge started as a desire for justice, but now it was pure instinct. I didn't just want to prove my innocence. I wanted to tip the scales of power.
Sarah showed up in my apartment with 2 coffees and a look that already knew there was no turning back. The rain beat against the windows and New York seemed to conspire in silence. "You understand this could end in prison, right?" she said, opening the laptop with a surgeon's precision. "There's no clean revenge, Sarah, but there are deserved falls." She laughed, but there was fear there. The kind only someone who's seen empires crumble recognizes. Vasco wasn't just a company, it was a fortress, and we were tunneling underneath. We spent hours building the operation structure. She would access the main server, disguising data packets as routine backups. I would create secure duplicates and fake reports to keep Logan believing he was in control. Everything needed to look like an accident. Human error, system noise. They never suspect slowness, just failure, I said, and Sarah nodded. It was almost beautiful how 2 professionals could turn ethics into a weapon. Revenge, after all, is also a form of engineering. The following week, the plan went into action. Sarah was inside, auditing internal accounts. I, from outside, intercepted data and cross-checked illegal transfers. With every deviation identified, she planted small inconsistencies in the reports. The goal wasn't exposure yet. It was to let Logan trip over himself. And he did, when one of the subsidiaries reported non-existent profits. The first thread of the fabric started to unravel. "He's going to smell it," she said on the phone, watching from inside the building. "Let him smell. Predators follow the scent of blood, and his is closer than he thinks." I studied the spreadsheets, and it was almost poetic to see how greed traced its own path. With every adjustment from Logan, a new line appeared, a new contradiction. It was a cruel symmetry. The more he tried to hide, the more visible he became. On Friday, Sarah got something I didn't expect. A copy of Logan's personal schedule, meetings with politicians, tax consultants, and lawyers, all synced with the deviation dates. This is more than corporate corruption, Michael. This is influence peddling. I leaned back in my chair, trying to absorb the weight. Then let's play on their field. Sarah looked at me calmly. "Do you want to win or survive?" I replied, "Both." Before ending the day, I left an anonymous file on Vasco's server. Internal audit, do not delete. No hacker, no trick, just the right name in the right place. I knew someone curious would open it, and when they did, they'd see enough to doubt their own security. It wasn't the explosion yet. It was the fuse being lit. The noise would come later, and I'd be watching from outside, with a hot coffee and a discreet smile. On Monday, Vastoy woke up in panic. Rumors of an unauthorized audit ran through the corridors. Logan ordered access blocks, password reviews, culprit hunts. Sarah called me from the 47th floor bathroom, whispering, "They're hunting ghosts." I laughed. "Then it's good we're invisible." On the other end of the line, I could hear the muffled shouts, the chaos of a corporation that always believed in control, and now it was afraid. The manipulated reports started contradicting each other, investors demanded explanations, and the press caught the scent of scandal. Sarah maintained her neutral professional disguise while feeding the fire. I prepared a parallel audit simulation ready to leak if needed to pull the trigger. The board was set. and Logan still thought he was the king. Little did he know, he was already in check. In one of the early mornings, Sarah sent me a message. "He's trying to blame you." I opened the link, an internal memo accusing me of altering documents before the firing. He was preparing to destroy me preemptively. He forgot I didn't start the war. I sent back a photo of the original file intact with digital stamp and time. And I have all the bullets.
2 days later, an emergency meeting was called. Sarah was there, describing everything through the hidden earpiece. He's saying he'll hire an independent audit to end the speculations. I smiled slowly, because that was the moment I'd waited for. "And who will conduct the audit?" I asked. "Me." Fate sometimes has a refined sense of humor. She would be the weapon and the disguise at the same time. While Logan tried to control the damage, I initiated Phase 2. I found the European investor from the 9.5 million contract and alerted him anonymously. "Check your payments. The money didn't arrive where it should." That was enough to sound the alarm. 3 days later, the client sent an official request for clarification to Vascor. That document would be the first public crack and the beginning of the collapse. On the night the request was filed, I sat on the balcony and watched illuminated Manhattan. Every light was a story, and some were about to go out. I picked up the phone and sent Sarah a short message. "No turning back now." She replied, "Was there ever?" I closed my eyes, hearing the distant sound of sirens. Some companies break from crisis, others from pride. Vascor, from me. The following days were a silent spectacle of corporate desperation. Vascor's corridors became whisper zones, and every glance carried suspicion. Sarah sent me encrypted messages reporting how Logan was starting to lose control. "He's paranoid," she wrote. "Makes them review even the coffee." The irony was sweet. The man who thought he dominated everything now saw conspiracy in every lit screen, and he wasn't entirely wrong. One morning, I received a call from a restricted number. I recognized the voice before he introduced himself. "Michael, we need to talk." Logan sounded too calm, and calm in people like that is poison. We met at the same cafe where it all began, and when he arrived, he looked like a caricature of worn power. "You still think you can win, Donovan?" he said, twirling his luxury watch on his wrist. "I don't want to win, Logan. I want balance. And the market will give me that." He tried to laugh, but the laugh died before it was born. "You don't understand, kid. This game is old, and you're just a pawn." I looked him in the eye and said, "Then I guess you've never seen a pawn cross the entire board." He frowned, like feeling the ground open beneath his feet. I paid the bill and left before his mask fell. Inside, something in me vibrated. Not victory yet, but the omen of impact. That same afternoon, Sarah confirmed what I already suspected. Logan was trying to buy the silence of some board members. Small transfers, masked favors, movements in personal accounts. "He's plugging leaks with gasoline," she said. "The financial system is a snake, and Logan was feeding it his own flesh." Fear made him predictable, and predictability for me was profit. At night, I left a folder on the dark web with redacted copies of part of the transactions. Nothing directly linking names, but enough to cause noise. In less than 2 hours, the topic was trending on an anonymous investor forum. Vascor's stock price started oscillating violently, and the market smelled crisis. Chaos didn't need proof, just suspicion, and I'd planted the perfect seed of doubt. Sarah called me after midnight, her voice trembling with excitement. "You did this, didn't you?" I replied with the most eloquent silence I could. "Michael, they're collapsing internally. Tomorrow the CEO will call an emergency meeting." I smiled, looking at the city's reflection in the windows. Perfect. Time for the empire to start imploding. She laughed softly. "You seem too calm for a man about to destroy a dynasty." "I'm just returning the balance, Sarah, a penny at a time." The extraordinary board meeting happened on a gray morning, with the wind blowing hard between the buildings. Sarah described everything through the earpiece, like narrating a play. "They're nervous, Michael. The CEO is pale. Logan tries to speak, but no one listens." I could almost smell the fear rising through the glass. Every phrase of hers was an open window to the collapse. "He said he'll blame a disgruntled ex-employee." I smiled slowly. Let him try. Every villain needs a story. While the chaos took shape inside, I prepared the final blow. I remembered the 9.5 million European contract, the one Logan used as a disguise to launder money. I'd spent the previous night analyzing the document and spotted a forgotten clause, a legal loophole. The client could rescind the contract without penalty if they detected compliance inconsistencies. All it took was a formal complaint for the deal to collapse, and I had exactly what they needed to see.
I compiled an anonymous dossier with copies of emails, bank records, and internal reports, all dated, clean, and verifiable. I sent it to the European Holdings contact address with a single message: check your trust. It was the kind of phrase that sounded like a warning, but acted like a detonator. In the next 48 hours, the request for an international independent audit would be filed, and with it, the beginning of Vascor's ruin. While waiting, I felt something I didn't expect, a flash of guilt. Maybe it was fatigue. Maybe the memory of the time I believed in corporate ethics. Sarah noticed in my voice. "Michael, you okay?" I took a deep breath, just remembering that before all this, I believed in justice. Now I only believe in documentary proof. She laughed without humor. "Welcome to the real world. Sometimes revenge is only possible when you kill the idealist inside you." 2 days later, the bomb exploded. The European client terminated the contract and demanded an international investigation. The stock plummeted over 40% in a single day. Logan tried to react, calling an improvised press conference. "All this is an attempt at corporate sabotage," he declared. The cameras swarmed him like vultures, and for the first time, the public saw what I'd always seen: an arrogant boy trying to look adult in the face of his own disaster. That night, Sarah sent me a short message. "He's done." But I didn't reply. I walked Manhattan streets, the cold wind cutting my face, the signs flashing above me. Revenge doesn't bring relief. It brings silence. I stopped in front of Vascor's facade and stared at the illuminated logo. "You took my job. I took your family's legacy." And with that, I walked away without looking back, because sometimes the end doesn't need an audience, just consequence. The fall was quick, brutal, and public. Vascor's official statement, calling the fraud operational misunderstandings, became a joke in financial markets. By afternoon, the inevitable happened. The FBI entered the building. The image went viral in seconds. Federal agents in dark suits carrying folders and computers, with the Vascor logo reflecting in the glass like a luxury epitaph. Logan was surrounded by the press on the way out. "Did you embezzle funds, Mr. Harper? Did your father know about the scheme?" No response. Just sweat, rage, and the lost look of someone who never imagined the world could say no. That was the true price of arrogance. Not prison, but the public humiliation that unmasks a god and reveals the spoiled boy behind him. Richard Harper, his father, appeared hours later at a press conference. Red eyes, worn countenance, and then he did what every cowardly king does in his final act: sacrificed his own son live, shifting all blame to Logan and promising full cooperation with the authorities. I watched it all in silence, without a drop of satisfaction. Revenge is an exact science, but emotionally sterile. The taste is never sweet. It's metallic, like blood in the mouth. The empire wasn't just falling, it was cannibalizing itself to survive. The next day started with an unexpected message. Contract officially rescinded. International investigation opened. It was from the European client. Short, surgical, devastating. Vascor lost the biggest contract in its history. In minutes, the exchange reacted with a brutal drop, and investors started suing the company. Sarah called me, her voice trembling between excitement and dread. "You did this, Michael. They're crumbling." "No, Sarah. They destroyed themselves. I just turned on the light." As the chaos spread, I prepared for what was coming. It was time to reveal the final piece. Through an anonymous account, I sent the original fraud documents to the press, digitally signed by Logan Harper. The headlines exploded like fireworks in the middle of the corporate apocalypse. CEO's son involved in international scheme. Audit confirms 9.5 million embezzlement. The Harper name became synonymous with ethical bankruptcy. And ironically, a compliance lesson. Logan tried to counterattack, but there was no ground for it.
The board voted his summary dismissal and his father's permanent removal. The image of him leaving the building surrounded by cameras stuck with me. The same elevator, the same floor, but an opposite fate. When I left, he smiled. When he left, no one smiled anymore. There's a poetic symmetry in that. Power never falls. It gets pulled, and I just held the rope firmly. At night, I opened the laptop and accessed an old email, saved like a silent trophy. It was the proposal from the European client, now addressed to me. We are interested in your new consultancy. Value US dollars 9.5 million. I stared at that number, fixed, precise, cruelly symbolic. They lost the client, and the client came to me. The world turns around values. Some call it money, others karma. I called it justice. When the sun rose, New York seemed the same. The traffic, the cafes, the taxi noise. But inside me, there was a strange kind of silence. I picked up the contract and signed it slowly, feeling the pen's weight. You took my job, Logan. I took yours. I closed the document and let the city sound swallow me. Sometimes winning is just knowing when to stop. And I stopped there, at the exact line between revenge and peace. 3 months later, I was invited to a meeting in a mirrored building on Park Avenue. The European client wanted to discuss a long-term proposal, now with me in charge. Entering the room, I felt the same smell of expensive varnish and cold coffee that had followed me since the firing day. The representative greeted me with a firm handshake and a calculated smile. Mr. Donovan, right? It was a pleasure to see ethics amid the chaos. And for the first time, I heard that compliment without feeling weight. As he talked about the numbers, I realized how much the business world was made of cycles. The same contracts, the same games, just changing names on the signs. I was no longer the employee who followed rules. I wrote them. We want your consultancy to handle financial integrity reports in the new contract, he said. Projected value, $9.5 million. The coincidence sounded almost karmic, a twist of fate that made me smile unwittingly. When the meeting ended, he walked me to the elevator. You know, Mr. Donovan, some say revenge and justice are the same thing. What do you think? I looked at his reflection in the glass and replied, it depends on who's holding the pen. The elevator descended, and with it, a sense of closure. That wasn't the end of Vascor, but the beginning of my own empire. One built on truths, not well-paid lies. Back on the street, New York's cold wind hit me like a distant memory. People followed their routines, unaware that one company's ruin had created another in the shadows. I picked up the phone and sent Sarah a short message. We did it. Minutes later, she replied with a simple fire emoji. I pocketed the phone, took a deep breath, and crossed the street. I'd won, and the most ironic part was that no one would ever know. Logan Harper's fall became case study material in universities and lectures on corporate ethics. He disappeared from the news, now living as the ghost of a broken dynasty. His father, Richard, sold what was left of Vascor and retired in silence. I watched it all from afar, with the coldness of someone who understands that time is the true judge. Sarah, on the other hand, rose quickly, now chief auditor at a multinational, learning from others' mistakes. One night, I received a message from her. Want to know what the board said about you today? I typed, depends, good or bad. She replied, they called you the inevitable consequence. I stared at the screen for long seconds, imagining how that phrase summed it all up. I never wanted to be a hero, nor a villain. I just wanted balance. The problem is, in a world where everyone lies, truth becomes a lethal weapon. Even with the consultancy's success, there was something that didn't come back. The silence after victory. When everything ends, a void remains that money doesn't fill. Sometimes I rewatch the video of the press conference where Logan lost everything. Not for pleasure, but to remember the price of what I'd won. Revenge gives power, but also takes the taste of rest. Sarah said I needed to learn to let go of the past, but the past is the only thing that doesn't let go of us.
One morning, I received an unmarked envelope. Inside, a simple card. Harper & Sons Financial Group invites you to a partnership proposal. I froze for a few seconds, my heart caught between laughter and disbelief. I flipped the card and saw the new CEO's name, Logan Harper Jr. I laughed alone, leaving the paper on the desk. Fate, it seems, likes irony. And maybe, just maybe, I still had one more chapter to write. The proposal from Harper & Sons sat on my desk for 3 days, untouched, like an unwanted memory. Sarah said it was a sign, an opportunity to close the cycle. Close? I asked. Or restart? The difference between the two is such a thin line, it almost doesn't exist. In the end, I accepted the meeting, more out of curiosity than ambition. I needed to see with my own eyes how far the Harper name still breathed. The building was new, the logo too, but the air was the same. Pretension masked as professionalism. I was greeted by an assistant, too young, too nervous, who led me to the glass room. And there he was, Logan Harper Jr. So like his father, that time seemed to spin. "Mr. Donovan," he said, extending his hand, "my father spoke a lot about you." Those words had poison and admiration in equal doses. I replied with a firm handshake and a gaze that weighed years. We talked business, contracts, opportunities.
He spoke of reconstruction, reputation, a new era. I listened and studied every gesture, every pause. The Harpers always have the same flaw. They thought control was an inheritance. "We want your consultancy with us. We need someone with your integrity." I swallowed the laugh. Integrity was the word they corrupted most. "Does integrity have a price, Mr. Harper?" I asked. He smiled, finding humor in what I said. "It does, and you've already paid it once." I left the meeting with the contract in hand and a doubt burning inside. Sarah called me as soon as I got in the car. "So?" I stayed silent for a few seconds, watching Manhattan's horizon. "They still don't get it, Sarah. Ruin isn't measured in money. It's a permanent state." She laughed low. "So what are you gonna do?" I looked at the document one more time before replying. Nothing. Sometimes the smartest revenge is not retaliating. He spoke of reconstruction, reputation, a new era. I listened and studied every gesture, every pause. The Harpers always have the same flaw. They thought control was an inheritance. "We want your consultancy with us. We need someone with your integrity." I swallowed the laugh. Integrity was the word they corrupted most. "Does integrity have a price, Mr. Harper?" I asked. He smiled, finding humor in what I said. "It does, and you've already paid it once." I left the meeting with the contract in hand and a doubt burning inside. Sarah called me as soon as I got in the car. "So?" I stayed silent for a few seconds, watching Manhattan's horizon. "They still don't get it, Sarah. Ruin isn't measured in money. It's a permanent state." She laughed low. "So what are you gonna do?" I looked at the document one more time before replying. Nothing. Sometimes the smartest revenge is not retaliating.
The following months were strangely calm. The consultancy grew, contracts multiplied, but the sense of purpose had dissolved. Sarah said I was different, less impatient, more human. "You're finally learning to live after the war," she commented during dinner. I smiled without replying, but something inside me disagreed. Living after the war is easy. The hard part is convincing yourself it's really over. One afternoon, I visited the old Vascor building, now empty, sold to another corporation. The golden letters had been removed, but it was still possible to see the marks where they'd been. I entered the lobby and saw myself reflected in the glass. A different man, but made of the same material. I thought of the firing day, Logan's words, the anonymous email that changed everything. "You just destroyed your career," he said. And he was right. Destroying was the first step to rebuilding. Sarah found me there, unsurprised. "Knew I'd find you here." We walked the empty hallways, footsteps echoing like memories. "Do you think it was worth it?" she asked. I took time to reply. "Revenge is never worth it, but truth, always." She nodded, and we stayed silent for a while. Sometimes it's not forgiveness that heals. It's realizing nothing more needs to be said. The past was finally quiet. That night I sat on the balcony with a glass of wine and the Harper contract still on the table. Did I sign? No. I burned it. I watched the paper turn to ash and rise with the wind, taking with it the last part of what I was. "Goodbye, Vascor," I murmured, watching the embers disappear. Sarah called and asked what I was doing. I replied, closing a cycle and starting another, maybe.
She laughed. No revenge, I hope? No revenge, I confirmed. And for the first time, I believed it. A few weeks later, a letter arrived at my office. Hand-delivered, no sender. The envelope was heavy, thick paper, and the golden seal reflected the late afternoon sun. For a moment, I thought it was another contract, another client, more work. But when I opened it and read the first paragraph, I felt time stop. It was a formal invitation to a corporate ethics conference, and my name was on the speaker list. Right below, in smaller letters, sponsorship, Harper & Sons Financial Group. I stared at those words like facing a ghost. Part of me wanted to laugh, another to tear the paper and forget. The Harper name seemed the shadow insisting on stretching over what was left of my past. Sarah appeared at the office door, watching my silence. "What is it?" she asked. I just handed her the letter. She read, raised her eyebrows, and gave a half smile. "Looks like fate has a sense of humor. You accepting?" I took time to reply. I walked to the window and looked at the city's reflection, the same cold shine that always made me feel small and invincible at the same time. "I don't know, Sarah. Maybe there's no fate, just repetitions disguised as choices." She approached, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Then choose differently this time." The words hung in the air. Sometimes the simplest advice is also the hardest to follow. I took a deep breath and put the invitation in the drawer. The next morning I left the office before dawn and walked to the Hudson River. The wind was biting but clean, and the horizon was rising in shades of orange. I threw the invitation into the water and watched it float for a few seconds before disappearing. "Some stories don't need continuation," I murmured. The phone buzzed with a new message from Sarah. "Did you do the right thing?" I smiled, typing just, "This time, yes." And for the first time in years, there was nothing left to prove to anyone or to myself.